Our next speaker is Dr. Shane Galley, and he received his BS in chemistry from Ithaca College. And at Ithaca College, he worked with Professor Anna Larson investigating rhodium PNP pincer catalysts for alkyne dimerization. He went on to Florida State University for his PhD in inorganic chemistry, studying non-aqueous coordination chemistry of transuranium elements. So certainly a kind of diverse set of different experiences. And in 2017, he did a postdoc with Professor Suzanne Bart at Purdue University, of course, one of our CSSM PIs, where he studied organometallic chemistry of lighter actinides, mainly focused on reduced thorium species for multi-electron chemistry. Most recently, he is an assistant research professor who is working out of the Colorado School of Mines, and we are delighted to have him here today. So thank you very much, Shane, and take it away.
All right, thank you, Marta, for that lovely introduction, and thank you everyone for showing up today and being up for my talk. So I'm going to give a different style talk. It's not about science today. This is actually about a concept called thriving in ambiguity, right? And so we do this by the journey through the self, to the self, from ourself, right? And so the question is, what does that mean, right? What does it mean to thrive in ambiguity? We know, oh, my slides aren't close there. There it is. Oops. So what does it mean to thrive in ambiguity, right? We know what those words mean. It may not be concise and clear right off the bat, but it's about making decisions, making better decisions when the outcomes are not known, right? There is no set path to move forward. Sometimes we, when we get furniture from IKEA, right, we get that instruction pad. It may not be clear, but there's still a pathway through, right? We're talking about now, we're moving into a spot where situations don't have a definite answer. They don't have a right answer or a wrong answer. It's open to interpretation. And so a way we can combat this is by working together, right? We can motivate others during this time of uncertainty, right? Giving the sense that we have incomplete data or not enough direction, and everything is changing at a given moment. And so this makes me think about, when I teach yoga, I've been teaching for 3 years. This is a concept I always teach to and speak to is, being in the present moment and making a clear, concise decision on moving forward. And so it makes me bring back to my childhood, right? So there's a Dr. Seuss book called Oh, the Places You'll Go. And there's a good quote there. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You are on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the one who will decide where to go. So if you read that book or remember this book, right, the child is on a journey, right? It's going out of town, going to new places. He doesn't know what direction to ever go. He just goes where he thinks is the best choice. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's not so great. But in the end of the day, he gets to A to B. He is a stronger person because he took that perseverance. He could have turned around and been like, no, man, I'm staying home. There's some crazy stuff out there. But no, he stepped outside of his comfort zone and to explore and travel new avenues. So this is what it means to thrive in ambiguity, right? Is to take on these unclear situations, the best to your capability, and move forward and keep moving forward and finding that momentum. And so we think about, there was a time of we lived in uncertainty, right? Uncertainty is just a lack of knowledge. So if you think about back in the day, maybe about 10, 15 years ago, before we had our phones that had a GPS, we used to use MapQuest, right? You had to log on to your dial-up, and take the 10 minutes to hook up. And then, you had to download that list of directions, right? Even before that, there was maps. And I don't know if I could even read a map to this day. But, it still has some sense of direction. And the technology wasn't there, but the technology caught up, right? And so we moved from uncertainty to certainty. Now at this point, we're starting to live in life in ambiguity, right? Where things are becoming unclear. These situations that are happening around us, they don't have a definite answer of how to solve them. And so how do we approach this? What is coming next? And so with this, emotions come up. We start to feel vulnerable and weak. Sometimes we feel negative, stressed, confused, disappointed. We've all been into a situation where we had to make a decision, based on not having the right answers, not having enough information, right? And in all the reality, we do feel the same things. But when we conquer it and we travel forth and move forward. We become stronger. We take that strategy we took and we move forward, and we become a better person and we go forward. And so we don't always have a solution, right? I think of two major things in history: the Manhattan Project and the expedition to the moon, right? There were goals for these projects, but no one knew how to do it. They had to work in teams to get to A to B. And there was many different approaches that each one took, but eventually over time, they were able to, travel into this ambiguous situation, take what they know, go forward and apply what they have to find a solution to these problems. And so how does this relate to now? Where are we now, right? We are coming out of a pandemic, or we're in the midst of a pandemic still, right? We know with the Alpha variant is down, now there's a new Delta variant coming in. And remember, we had 2-3 days to shut down, everything. And, we were told to stay in our houses for 2 weeks. This put us into a little cabin fever, right? We're itching to get out, we're itching to move, but it also made us scramble, right? Looking, how do I do? Like, where's my job going to be? How am I going to make money? All that stuff. All these thoughts start to come up. It really stopped us in our tracks. And there is no definite answer right now of how do we move forward, right? What approaches, what steps can we take to combat this? And so we have to ask our question: are we going to come out better than what we came into it, right? The answer is yes, you should, right? It is time to start thinking forward and moving into these uncomfort zones and becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Especially when there's more crises still yet to come, right? If you think about, what's been going on just in this year, we have inequality for trans rights and Black rights. We have, a healthcare system that many people can't afford. And the question is, how do we get that universal healthcare? Climate control, global warming is becoming a bigger and bigger factor every year. And so how do we solve these problems? And the last one I want to really mention is we talk about our school system, right? Our school system was made out of the 19th century, and we are still making test takers. At this time, when we are in these ambiguous situations and we're moving forward, we need problem solvers now. We don't need someone to regurgitate, tell us what the class was, and then get a diploma for just showing up. We need to start having these people think more critically, thinking outside the box and moving forward to tackle these problems. And so the way we have to do it is we have to shift our way of thinking, right? And so how do we shift the way of thinking? And so there's this concept that we talked about in yoga, in my yoga training, is the law of cause and effect, right? For every effect in your life, there's a specific cause, right? If you think about Thurton's new law of physics, right? For every reaction, there's an opposite and equal reaction, right? And so this means that in every interaction, that there is a pair of forces. These forces are equal, and that every force behind it has an effect. And there is an equal and opposite force as cause. So if you think about this in a game of chess, right? Life is like a game of chess. Every move is a choice. Every choice is a cause. You took responsibility to take that move, right? And that move then has an effect. The other player will act upon that. And so that is what it's like to living at cause, right? We're taking full and complete responsibility, right? This is like our dreams. What dreams do we have? What do we want to accomplish? Along with that, there's our success. What successes do we have in our life? And our failures even. Maybe we take control of our failures. Like, what did we learn from our failure? We took that made that choice, we failed. How do we change this? And lastly, our life, right? We are only responsible for our life, our direction, our life. And so moving forward, we don't have a set path in our life. We have to make those choices, those decisions to move forward. And so how do we do that, right? On the other side of the coin, it's living at effect, right? Something outside of themselves are responsible, right? So these are these external effects that happen, right? That negativity that's always like, why do I always get the bottom of the stick? Or, why do I always get, stuck on these low impact projects, right? These thoughts and feelings come up because of the things that happen around you. And it's because we are allowing these effects to take control. We're not taking action for our cause, our choice, right? And so we tend to find ourselves in these more negative clouds. And so in order to thrive in ambiguity, we need to start living in cause and leaving effect, right? So living at cause, means like we are getting results. We took a choice. We are going to judge that choice and see the outcome of that, right? That is of the results. You know, giving that is we have to try new things, right? So if you do the same thing over and over again, that's just a version of insanity, right? But if you start to try new things will happen, new results will come. From those, we'll find lessons. You know, these are the lessons that we can take through the rest of our lives with, or in any situation, and we can start improving ourselves. And if it doesn't work or there is failure with it, we try again. You know, it's defined by action, you know, taking control, finding the inspiration to keep moving forward and staying focused on our tasks, right? And if you're living in effect, you know, we find an excuse. If it's important to us, we'll find a way. And if it's not, we'll find an excuse, you know, and we wait for the opportunity to come when we're in effect, you know, we know as jobs don't come to our laps, you know, we have to go out and apply and show ourselves how good we are, right? That is living on cause. At effect, you know, we blame others for our lack of results or our lack of motivation. And then this can also be defined by jealousy, right? We're jealous of what other people have and why can't I have that? Or neediness, right? You need that other person, that codependence to lead you through, you know, to take that horse to water. And so as mentioned before, you know, we have to move forward. We have to think of our choices we make and keep going forward to strengthen so we can start to problem solve in this place of ambiguity. And so something that, you know, I think about what prevents us, you know, we are afraid to fail. We're afraid to be wrong, right? It's always embarrassing. I remember being in high school or college and raising your hand and you get the answer wrong. And yes, you get flushed with embarrassment and you turn red. That's just how it is sometimes. But we take that emotion, we harness it, and we go forward. You know, I put this picture of Big Bird in because this is how sometimes I do feel, and maybe you guys also feel like out of place or not in the right place. But remember that we all took this action to move forward. We all are here for a given reason, and we worked hard to be here. And so we can't let those feelings, you know, overconquer us. Another area that, you know, prevents ambiguity, you know, or thriving ambiguity is, you know, following the orders of others, right? We follow leaders. We like to be told what to do. When you get told what to do, you lose that creativity. You know, you lose thinking outside the box. And so how do you go from being told what to do to being creative, right? You have to step outside of that comfort zone, you know, and you start to explore. Maybe it's your organization that punishes you, right? So the organization could be, you know, when you're at work and you break something and you hear, oh, that's coming out of your paycheck. That's a negative feedback, right? That's something that you will afraid to work forth, right? And that there will help you, you'll lose motivation, right? If anything, you need to be rewarded for their good behaviors and so that you can keep moving forward and staying engaged. If you think about your personality type a little bit, you know, and if you're thinking about, you know, this cause and effect thing and you're like, I think I live in both. That's just how it is. It's an ebb and a flow, right? Sometimes we like tradition. Sometimes we like to stick to our routines. Structure is great and so is detail, right? But now in this time, we live in an ambiguous time. A lot more ambiguous situations are coming up. And so the question is, you know, how do we move from this? You know, how do I step outside these comfort zones, keep moving? And especially with these negative emotions that keep coming up after and after, you know, how do we deal with this? And so there's a couple of ways we can go about this. And so Jeff Moore is a football coach, I think at Texas. And so he has been speaking about thriving in ambiguity, right? So he took his team to the National Cup for football. And so he was able to apply this to strengthen his team. And so he came up with this concept with the 4 relationships. You have the relationship to yourself, which is going to be the most important one, right? This is the foundation. You know, we have to make sure that we're secure with ourselves. But then you have the relationship with your boss, the relationship with your team. So as in the lab, right? These are your cohorts, your grad students, your undergrads, even your postdocs, and direct reports. Direct reports are something we're not going to talk about today, but if you were a teacher or a professor, these are your students. If you're a coach, these are your athletes. So let's get talking about relationship to yourself. You need to have this conversation with yourself. Am I ready to tackle these problems? Am I ready to step outside this comfort zone? What feelings come up, right? And so if you're willing to leave your comfort zone, you're willing to grow. You have that courage to take that step forward and start moving in a position of ambiguity so you can start to conquer it. This also requires you to learn new skills, right? We can learn new skills along the way, and we take those skills with us to conquer and challenge ourselves. And then every time a step of the way, we need to acknowledge the feelings, right? And reflect. How did this make you feel? You know, did it make you feel sad or great? And if so, how would you change that, or would you keep doing the same? And so what happens when you make this strengthened relationship to yourself, you create a true, authentic self, right? You start to lose labels, right? Everyone likes labels. We tend to be put in boxes. But when we step outside that box and we start to get creative and start traveling forward, we've created an authentic self. And this is the self you want to be moving forward. And this is what you would take on into our groups, you know, into a leader position. Everyone has the ability to lead. Now you have the choice to lead or not to lead, but everyone has that opportunity. And the way to do it is to be this true, authentic self. Moving on is that relationship with you and your team, right? You find that strong foundation with your true, authentic self, and then you bring it to the team. And so you ask the question, what do I bring to this team, right? And so if you think about, you know, grad school to a postdoc position, right? You have a set of skills. And in that postdoc position, you can take those skills, or in the grad school, you can take what you learned in grad school and bring it to your postdoc and make it stronger. You can teach others, you can lead by example, right? Showing that, you know, this is what it means to work hard, or, you know, to strive in this place. Also working with the team, you know, you need to have a good communication with other members, right? If you start fighting and dismantling the group isn't going to move forward. It stops in its tracks. And so we need to have this open communication with everyone to strengthen us and so that we can move forward. He also talks about, you know, letting harmony catch up. So this means the connectivity of the group, right? You're not there to be everyone's friend, and it may not be true. You might not be friends with everyone you meet, and that's okay. But you need to start respecting people, because if you respect people, then you can start to open up that communication. And then over time, as you work together and strive forward, the harmony will catch up. And so he said, if you aren't contributing, you are actually robbing the team of success, right? So you're only as strong as your weakest person in that sense. And so lastly, you know, the last relationship I want to talk about is the relationship between you and your boss, right? Your boss is there to lead you to your success, or where you want to go in your life or your career, right? So the boss should be able to push boundaries. With that, you should be able to have that open and trust communication. Know that your trust is there, your boss is there to support you and to have your back when you need. It's very possible that times that your boss doesn't define the role, right? You may not know exactly what you're doing, or where you should be, or how you should be, right? And so that leads into that negative connotation and ambiguity, right? Like, what do I do? How do I do this? And so that's a conversation you want to have, you know, with your boss is, what is my role here? What am I doing? And how am I doing? And why am I doing this, right? Setting that strong foundation. So that gives you some direction. When we go into these ambiguous situations, we have that strong foundation behind us. And so there's a difference between managers and leaders in this sense, right? So a boss could be a manager, right? A manager knows where to go. They know how to get to A and B. There's a cookie cutter step. There's a direction, you know, and you don't view from that trail, right? And when the manager goes into spots of ambiguity, they tend to fall apart. That's because, you know, they are not open to new pathways. They're not open to stepping outside their comfort zone to learn. And so with a leader, it's a little different. Yes, they know where the A to B is, but they don't know how to get there. Just like the Manhattan Project, they knew what the ending goal was, but they didn't know how to get there right off the bat. They had to take what they know and they had to keep moving forward. A leader will also move with its team, or in sense, you, right? You have that connection. You guys both will travel at the same time together. And there's a little bit of comfort, right, in that you both are traveling on this path of unknown. And that brings you to, you know, strive to be better, strive to move forward. And so this leads into, so what we can sum this up as, you know, this matrix that Jeff Moore made, trying to overviewing of what these relationships should look like, you know, when we thrive in ambiguity. So we'll start to look at the left, right? Working independently. right? This is the introvert, right? The person who wants to be left alone, doesn't want to talk to, wants to show up and leave, right? They want certainty. They tend to want, to be like, this is black and white, this is not gray. In a team setting, they just want to be left alone. They don't want your feedback. They don't want to be helped. And it tends to hurt, the group as a whole. They want the boss to be flexible, right? So somebody who's independent usually has a strong, high ego, and they're like, actually, I want to work the 12 to 3, not the 9 to 5. And so, as you already know, that's not a reasonable, time frame. But these are how these people think. They go into the box and they stay in that box. And direct reports are, the customers or the athletes or the students that give the feedback. They don't want that. They don't want to change. Then we start to move into certainty, right? When we start to work together, right? You yourself, you can cope with some things that are uncertain. Yes, the path may not be as clear, but you have some stepping stones along the way. The team, you're working together. You are all friends. You're all having a good time, and you love being a part of this team, right? Your boss gives you reachable goals, which is great, right? You want to hit those little goals every step of the way. But the issue with that is, those goals become easier and easier and easier, and you start to, disengage and lose interest. And so you want to be pushed a little bit, and the direct reports will reward you for your good behaviors or the good findings. When we move into ambiguity, right, we start to strive together, right? We're moving forward. So with yourself, you're stepping outside your comfort zone. You are learning new things, and you're tackling the situation the best you can with the knowledge you have behind you. Your team embraces the tension. We'll talk about this tension a little more, right? But there's times you have debates with your lab mates, and you're just challenging the science behind it. And it makes you think differently, or makes them think differently. And that's how it should be. You should encourage each other to be better. Your boss should push you to your limits. Maybe they keep giving you those projects because they know that you can handle it and do it. They might not be clear and cut and dry, but you have a strong foundation. And so this is what we want to think about when we're driving into ambiguity is, where are you in this little chart, and how do you make those steps forward to traveling forward? And so I kind of want to talk about this tension a little bit, right? So in order to thrive in ambiguity together as a whole, we need to start competing and stop comparing, right? If you think about, you and your lab mate, or, you think about, oh, well, they have 5 papers, they must be really good. Or, like, oh, I'm going to get more papers than them. And you start to make that competition. You start to make these comparisons that you want to be better than them. And it kind of hurts you in that sense, because you're striving into a point of where you're just want to be the best you can be. But to get to that A to B, it's a clear-cut, dry path, right? When we think about competing, the origin, it means to strive together, right? That tension to build, challenging yourself, right? So if you think about this figure on the right, you see these 2 people, they're fighting over the concept that there's 7 pieces of plank wood, or one sees 5, right? And so these people see different things because they're looking at a different perspective. Neither of them are wrong, but and that's what it means to be in an ambiguous situation and creating that tension. Is you're starting to debate, you're starting to ask questions, and you're starting to take those steps outside your comfort zone, so that you, your team, and your boss can start to move forward. And that is where we want to start getting. And so we want to think about, what steps do we need to take to get there? And so there was a 6-step process, by Lisa Kristen. How do we take the steps moving forward? And so the first one is the mindset, right? There's 2 different sets of mind. There's the growth mindset and the fixed mindset, right? The growth perseveres in the face of failures, right? If you think about, talked about in the beginning, all the places I will go, that kid kept moving forward. He saw some stuff. He saw things he didn't like, but he still moved forward, right? He embraced any challenge or any obstacles in his direction, right? And always accept criticism, right? When someone gives you that criticism, you take it to heart and you move forward with it. And you always have that courage to learn, the ability to step out of your comfort zone and keep going forward. And then if you're limited, this is the person who avoids challenges. They give up easily, and they ignore the feedback. The feedback is the most important part, because you want to know, how you are doing. And so you need to ask yourself for the first step is, am I ready to face this ambiguous situation? You know that, you're going into this place of the unknown, and you start to label these emotions, right? And these emotions keep coming up, that negative emotions. And so you want to think about, how do you harness these emotions? Yes, I'm nervous, but I'm nervous because I'm moving forward into the unknown. And that you know that, and so you can start moving forward. Or you're very excited to start this new project because it's not well known or well documented. And so you want to start to identify these emotions that start to come up when we start to move forward in ambiguous situations. The second one is, who do you choose to be, right? This is the most important question. We have the ability every minute, every moment of the day to be who we want to be. For example, today, I hope I'm inspiring and educational to you, that you're learning something new. And by the end of this talk, I'm going to be relaxed. I'm done giving a talk. I can relax just a little bit, right? You have that opportunity as well. Who do you want to show up as? Do you want to show up as that courageous person who wants to learn? Or do you want to just stay in your bed all day because your light is dim and you need to recharge, right? That is the second step, is identifying who you want to be on any given day, on any given moment. And when that is set, you can move on to the third, right? We can start to think about clarity, right? With these ambiguous situations, it tends to be confusing. We start to lose the clear picture. And so the third step is, what am I trying to do here and why, right? We're trying to find the purpose, the goal, the ending goal of this project, right? And once you start to find that, by giving all the research you have behind you, that literature search we tend to do before we start a project, we find that question is, what is this problem? And so that leads to step 4. What is the real problem here, right? What are we trying to solve? What is the ending goal, right? So if you think about the expedition to the moon, they want to get to the moon. That's the end goal. It's a measurable goal. Once you get to the moon, we solve that goal. But without knowing that definite goal, you don't have a full solution. And so this is why we need to establish what is the real problem and what is happening. And so the last part is the action step, right? Making this action plan. So which data will I use? You think about, when we start the project, we collect so much data. We spend so much time in the library or reading literature, and that we get lost in literature sometimes. We take a path that, isn't clear, and we're going down a hole that we probably shouldn't be going down. And so the idea is to take all that information that we have and see to start to cut it down. We start to cut down the information, make it more concise, and so that we can start to move forward and take it and find that clearer picture, right? Finding that clarity once again and keeping there. And then lastly is, what are the next steps? When you're starting to move forward, we're starting to hit that. We make these little goals along the way, right? Those little goals is what gives us momentum or courage to keep moving forward, to staying in this place of clarity and managing the situation that once felt overwhelming or impossible, that it's starting to become possible, and then we can keep moving forward. And so I kind of want to start to wrap up the talk a little bit, of techniques we can use to carry on us, right? To start to thrive in this ambiguity. And so the first one, I want to think about setting goals, right? We just talked about that a little bit. So a goal is a desired result. Where do we want to go? What is that A to B point, right? And there's 3 types of goals here, right? We have the time goals, which tend to be the short goals, right? Those are like the goals like, I'm going to save $100 this month. And then those tend to be into the longer goals where, maybe that long-term goal is, I'm going to have enough money to go to Australia for a vacation in spring of 2023. Focus goals are these long-term goals, right? These are the life-changing goals. These are usually the ones that we hear around, every new year, like, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, I'm going to live a healthier life, I'm going to eat better, right? These are the goals that, that tend to be longer term, and we tend to lose, motivation for these terms because we don't see the results right away. And so this is why we kind of want to focus on the time goals to focus on these focus goals. And the last goal we can talk about is a topic-based goals, or a specific area of your life. Think of your career, right? So if you want to be, an astronaut who wants to go to the moon, right? You need to have a good degree, and then you need to get training to become an astronaut, right? Those are the goals that you need to take a step forward. And once each goal you hit, you can start to change your life. And so the reasons why we use goals is to set direction, right? So sometimes we don't have the proper direction. There's not a cookie cutter instructions that we need to keep going forward. And so they also help us organize our time and our resources, right? There's only so much time in the day, right? And so if we have our goals already oriented, we know how much time we can spend on each goal at any given time, and also our resources, right? Our time is a great resource, but so is our money. And so how do we focus that and we use goals? So, we set a goal, we make a plan, we get to work, we stick with it, you reach the goal, and then you can celebrate. And so you want to be smart about your goals, right? So this is an acronym that we can use to set a goal, right? So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time specific. So specific, right? What do you want to accomplish? Why are you setting this a goal, and why do you want to accomplish this, right? Measurable, how do you measure this goal, right? How do you know you hit the end, or how along the way, how do you know that you are moving forward? Next one is attainable. This is tend to be the harder one, right? The realistic, right? Setting that goal, can you actually achieve this? Given where you are now, can you actually move forward, right? So if you're like, I want to be a movie star, but yet you are an introvert hiding in your room reading books all day, you're not going to get to that goal. You're not working for it. It's not a realistic goal. So you want to think about when you set these goals, you want to make sure that it's something within your reach. Relevant, you want to make sure that it's in your wheelhouse, right? Is this worth working hard? You have to put time and effort forth, right? And so you might want to make this goal, as relevant as you can. And then lastly, time specific, right? You want to be able to have that measurable, right? I will have this done by X, And so I think about this myself a little bit and what I wanted. And so a goal I came up with is I want to be on a tenure track position by the fall of 2020. And so I kind of go through this SMART stuff. Is it specific? Yes, right? I want to be on a tenure track rather than a soft funding spot. Is this measurable? It is, right? When I hit the tenure track position, this is when I know I accomplished the goal. Is it attainable? Absolutely. I've got my PhD. I went on to do my postdoc. I'm in a research professor position. And so yes, the next track is, the tenure track. Is it relevant? Is it worth working hard for? Absolutely, right? And is there a time when I want this accomplished by? Yes, there is. Now, as we know that life can change, right? And life changes and things can be thrown at us. And so, that's what's being ambiguous in this lifetime. We don't know what's thrown at us. So we have to be able to be open to change in that. And so for our discussion, I shouldn't include it with our questions, but I didn't. I want each of you to, come with one career goal that, we can talk about. We can talk about how to set a goal further to keep you moving forward, right? Goals are so good when we are hitting this place of ambiguity, right? We need to keep moving forward somehow, and goals are the way we do it. And so we think about leaders who actually have skills that thrive in ambiguity, right? The first one is to remain calm and steady, right? If the person's running around as we have a problem, what do we do? What do we do? You're thinking irrationally. When you take a step back and you start to calm yourself, you can start to think rationally, right? And then you can start to face this uncertainty so you can start to move forward. Leaders also thrive with little to zero guidance, right? So you have a task at hand, but you have the creativity, you have the ability, right? We have that discussion with ourselves. Am I ready to take on this ambiguous situation? And so with that, we can start to move forward, right? Stepping outside our comfort zone, taking our skill set and applying to where we need to go. They also have flexibility and ready to pivot as necessary, right? So as I talked about before in our goals, things can change, things happen, right? That is just the way of life. And so we have to be ready for those moments at any given time. And so we may have to change our plan of action, and that is a-okay, right? Because you have that skill set. You might have to take that step back to find that calmness, and then you'll be able to move forward once again. And lastly, as a whole, a leader should be able to focus the team, right? Sometimes the team is lost and all confused. And so the leader, will help you find that strong foundation. What do you have under control? What do you know? And what is unchanging, right? And that helps the team to start to move forward, And then we create that tension with the team to challenge ourselves to keep tackling those problems that we want to tackle. And so here are 4 strategies we could talk about with dealing with ambiguity. The first one is take action, right? Get up and go. Just say yes. That is taking action, right? We're taking that motivation and moving forward. We're stepping outside our comfort zone. The biggest problem with this one is that sometimes we find this analysis paralysis, and who doesn't love a good rhyme, right? This is where we think all those what ifs. Well, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if, I do this and this happens, right? You're thinking all the outcomes, right? You're thinking all the causes you are doing, but then you're looking at all the effects, right? And so this puts you into an infinite loop. You need to just drop that and move forward. You don't actually know the outcome until you start doing it. The second one is take a calculated risk, right? Calculated risk is, you're giving up data. You have some data behind you. You have some knowledge what you need to extract. Just take that jump, take that action to move forward. If you get it on the first try, awesome, right? It feels great, and it makes you want to keep trying harder and moving forward. If you fail, you have to take a step back and realize, what choice did you make? What was the outcome, and how do we fix that, right? That's that calculated risk. You had that foundation, you took that risk, and this is the outcome. The third one is to fail, adapt, and pivot, right? So if you fail at the risk, right, you fail. And it's not a very good feeling. But we take that failure as a learning lesson because you took the courage to move forward, right? And so you want to adapt to what you found or any changes that occur. And then maybe you have a direction and maybe you need to pivot. You be opening to that change. And so that's how we start to conquer these ambiguous situations, is by failing, adapting, and pivoting at any given moment to move forward. And the last one is to have strong problem-solving skills. And so as a scientist here, this is innate in us. This is, kind of secretly given to us. And as through our whole career, we have to have problem-solving skills. We are all tackling problems. And the question is, how are we doing this? So I kind of broke down the methodology of problem solving, right? So it's a loop, right? So it's an identifying the problem is the first one. So what is the problem? What are we trying to face here? And then we define it. We give words to it, and we make that problem clear and concise, giving us that clarity. The third is forming the strategy. How are we moving forward? We don't always have a map or directions to follow, right? And so we have to come up with a plan ourselves. Then you organize the information we have. What did you collect from literature? What knowledge do you have prior? What do you know now? And what do you still need to know, right? And so what you need to know is what you're starting to solve, right? Moving forward. The fifth is allocating the resources, right? Your time, money. Is this actually worth moving ahead? Is this problem going to solve something, And then the last two are kind of go hand in hand. The sixth is monitoring the progress. As you move forward, as you take that reaction, you go to the lab and you do that reaction, right? And you monitor the reaction, right? Is it something you want? Is it something you're getting? Or you evaluate and it's nothing you want, and you have to go back to identifying the problem and going through these steps again, over and over and over again, until you find where you want to go. And so that is the methodology of problem solving. And so the question is, how does this relate to us? Why am I giving you this talk about thriving in ambiguity? And so if you think about the center, the CSM center, we're trying to solve separation of critical elements, right? Yes, there are techniques that are known. They're not the best techniques. They're not efficient. We're starting to go into an area that is not well documented. And so we want to be able to advance these separations by cleaner ways, new ways, efficient ways, right? Well, you think about your research, right? Every project has an objective, right? And that objective, but how do you get to A to B is going into those ambiguous situations. So, you need to try things. You need to get in the lab. You have to get your hands dirty, be creative, stepping outside those comfort zones. And the other one is your career path, right? Everyone has their own set career path. No two career paths are the same, right? This is the path you take in your life. Who do you want to be? Who do you show up as, right? And so this is where we start thinking about this. You know, they're never defined. And so we need go back to those problem solving skills to live in cause and effect to start to conquer this thriving in ambiguity. So I kind of almost want to wrap up here with, you know, some 4 takeaways, you know, about what I think is important coming out of this talk. Is the first one is to never give up, right? The lab, our life can be so defeating at times, and that's just failure, right? It's the way of learning. But you take those steps forward, you find that courage to keep moving forward, and you keep learning. You take what you learn and you move forward and expand your skill set every step of the way. The second is to leave your comfort zone. We never grow in our comfort, right? If we stay at home all day because it's comfortable, we never go outside and see what the world has to offer, right? And so how do we know what's good for us or what's better for us? And so we need to step outside those boxes that we've set for ourselves and be able to challenge ourselves and learn and take on something new. The third is show up for yourself. Who do you want to be, right? This is all you. This is the relation to you and yourself, right? Who do you want to show up as? Am I going to be motivational and courageous today? Or, you know, or am I going to stay in bed? These are the questions we have to keep asking ourselves every day, every moment. This is the drive forward. Without this relationship, without showing up for yourself, nothing's going to change and you're going to always find yourself in a rut. So you want to be able to be there for you. And the last one is set goals. You know, you want to be able to set goals, conquer, find that motivation to keep moving forward and setting yourself a higher standard. And so I think we have some time. So I kind of planned a little activity. So, you know, as a yoga instructor, you know, breathing is one of the most important things, right? If we think about when we change our lives, we always think about, you know, changing our diet, you know, changing the amount of water we drink, right? So after 7 days without food, we die. Without, you know, drinking water for a couple days, you know, we tend to die. But we never focus on the breath, right? Without minutes of a breath, we can, you know, we will die or pass away. But that breath is what's so powerful. It's what makes those leaders calm and stable. And so I'm going to play this video, and I want you to actually watch this video and try to be, you know, engaged in this. A circle is going to appear, and you're going to inhale when the circle expands, and exhale when the circle contracts. And so just get in a comfortable spot, allow yourself to relax. You're going to focus on that circle, and it's only going to be 2 minutes. And it's going to go by pretty fast. You'd be surprised. And then I'm going to ask a couple questions after, just kind of rhetorical questions about the being of doing this exercise. So inhale, breathe in, fill up. Exhale, empty out. We did it for a minute, right? And so did you feel calmer? Did you feel a little more relaxed? You know, by focusing on that breath, were you able to think a little more clearer? And so remember, this is a tool that we have, you know, when the talk gets going, you know, and, you know, we are finding ourselves in this confusion spot, and that, you know, we have this breath to focus ourselves. You know, we can take that step back, focus on that breath, collect ourselves, think about our thoughts, so we're not irrationally thinking, and we start to think rationally and move forward. And so I really want to end, you know, with just giving you this message. is that you have the power to keep moving forward, right? This is all about you, your choices. You are living at cause, right? Knowing that your actions have an effect, that you, no matter what, you keep striving to be the best you can be and keep conquering yourself, right? As these ambiguous situations are never going to stop, you need to be ready and prepared for them at every given step. Have that courage to keep learning. Have that courage to keep out, stepping outside your comfort zone and growing, and just becoming your true, authentic self. And as we wrap up with this talk, we go back to the "oh places you'll go." Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way. And so I would like to open up for any questions, comments, concerns, emotional outbursts you may have. And yeah, thank you for listening to my talk today. Thank you.
Okay, I guess, Marta, we can have our open discussion now before we break up into breakout rooms. So does anyone have any questions for Shane? Or comments or emotional outbursts they'd like to, for the whole
Just get them out. It's A-okay. We can just all scream at once.
I had a question for you, actually, about that, what you mentioned. Well, even just the act of the presentation that you did, but the fact that you mentioned that you've been teaching yoga and doing yoga and have all this training in yoga. But did you find, like, how has your attitude and your perception and kind of your everyday changed as you've gone from the very beginning, when you were maybe very self-conscious about things and like, oh, well, I don't know how people are going to respond, versus, now when it's been a few years and you kind of get the feeling of it, so
Yeah.
How has that changed and how does that affected other aspects of your life?
Yeah. So I actually found yoga in middle of grad school during my PhD. And as everyone probably already knows, your PhD is hard. A lot of negative emotions, right? I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. Or when am I going to get fired? When is my boss going to call me into the office and let me go? These are the most common things I had in grad school. So when I started yoga, it brought me out of those negativity zones, right? It brought me to the present moment, to clearing my head, to being present to myself, right? Yoga is a self-discipline activity, right? You have to show up for yourself and be there, right? And so with that, you were able to start to think rationally. You start to clear your mind. And every so often in a yoga class, as a teacher, we have to start sprinkling methodology, right? Becoming that true, authentic self that we talk about. And so over time, it took about a year, but over time, it started to like sink in and settle and think in and be like, oh, I do belong here, right? Because I worked myself to get here, right? I belong in this present moment because everything I did to work up to this moment, I put that effort forth. I did that work. And so with that, every day, I take that with me. I come to my mat 5 to 6 times a week, and then I teach 3 to 4 times a week, and I still always teach that, right? We show up for ourselves, and that is what we do. Even with these ambiguous situations, right? We keep coming back to ourselves and we make the best decisions the best we can. And so, yes, that's how yoga, came to me and how it made me move forward.
I think you made a really good point there that I think speaks to probably many of us. And I'm speaking for myself, of course, in this case, but I think that this is more of a broad topic about things like imposter syndrome, right? Where we all sort of think we don't really belong here, with that idea of, well, they're going to figure out the real deal.
We're all that big bird.
Right. And you have to have that conversation with yourself. It's like, no, like I did the things and this is where I'm supposed to be. So it's okay. But I feel like, I know for me, I've always felt that way, but I also know many of my, colleagues and friends and students have felt that way, where they're like, well, I don't even know why I'm in this class. I, got a B plus and the other one, and I didn't think I understood it. Well, okay, but you got a B plus, like you did it, you made it through, like there's a reason. You at least have the basics, you have enough to move forward, and having that wherewithal to
Eric just said he's going to go apply at Starbucks. I say that every day. They have health insurance. It's a good job. But yes, and that's the thing. And that's where that relationship between you and yourself comes in, right? We strengthen that bond, that trust we have for ourselves. And that's how we move past these problems.
I'd like to make a little follow-up comment about that if I could, Shane. It was a really insightful and important presentation. And I think another thing that kind of came through for me about sort of the mind-body connection that you have with your yoga practice is the importance of self-care in order as a component of thriving in ambiguity, and that taking care of our bodies and getting good food and rest and exercise is also an important part of this, because it enables for sort of more clear thinking and rational thought around making important decisions instead of withdrawing into yourself. So I think that's an important aspect of this discussion as well. You also we're talking about time management, and it reminded me about Professor Jen Schaefer's talk from last year in the SA program about developing effective time management skills as a researcher. So I think that your talk and her talk will make a great complement to one another, and that I wanted to remind everyone that these talks will be posted to the CSSM YouTube webpage or YouTube site, so that people can draw on these resources in the future. So that was 2 comments, and now I have a question, and that is about sort of what Alex Weiberg and my colleague Neil Thompson sometimes talk about, is the fallacy of sunk costs. So part of, I think, thriving, which is a term from economics, of course, thriving in ambiguity is about decision making, is one of the things that I took from your remarks here today. And so in research, it can be really hard to know when to end a project, for example, right? If you have put a lot of time and effort into a project already, there's a sense that you have to keep putting time and effort because you've already spent time and effort. So can you give us any advice about, for example, in research, knowing when to say when on a project that is not making a good enough rate of forward progress, and to pull the plug and spend your time on something else? I don't know, maybe you've experienced this in your own work, or you have some general thoughts about that, the fallacy of sunk costs with related to research.
Yeah, so that's a really common one, right? So you think about, so I'm going to go back to my first year in grad school for this, because this is actually what happened to me. So I was handed a ligand, and, I was told to crystallize the ligand, and I spent a year trying to crystallize it, make the structure that my boss wanted. I didn't want to fail him, all those emotions came up, and that frustration, the wanting to quit. But it actually got to the point where, after, hitting that year mark, you're like, this is not working, right? I've put all my eggs in this basket, right? And I've got nothing out of this. Yes, I learned some new skills, right? I learned how to characterize, what I made. It was never what we wanted, right? It was never that. And so you need to think about when you are in a project, right? And you hit these ruts. Are you in a rut because, you are not engaged anymore? Did you disengage yourself from the project because it's not, fulfilling what you need? Or is it the project itself? Is it just a hard project and that you need, it's time to let it go? And so that's what you want to think about in, with these projects is they never have a definite ending, right? You can always advance the project, but the rule is, you want to get out, when you maximize it in a sense, right? So, so I ultimately abandoned that ligand system and that whole project because it didn't give me anything, right? Or, recently, towards my end of my PhD and into my postdoc, I had a project that kept on going and giving new information. And so I went down that path, right? So you always want to find what gives you the most the more fruitful results, right? And don't ever forget about those side projects that we're given, right? They do pan out, but they do take some time and effort, right? And it comes to the point where you need to ask yourself, is this time worth my investment, right? Where can I focus my time better, right? And this will probably go back into Jen's talk as she gave last year, right? Is that time management? Like, am I putting too much time in this and I'm not getting anything out? Or can I put my time somewhere else into this new project and get more results? And so these are questions you always have to ask ourselves, right? And this is also that relationship between you and your boss, right? That open communication, that trust. You know, if you are feeling this in your project, you know, you should be able and comfortable to go to your boss and talk to these about the problems, right? And together you can figure out a solution. And so that is what I would have to say to that, Eric.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, well, Marta, I think we can probably go over into our discussion groups if you have a link to share as well as of the questions, I think.
Yeah, I had one actual little comment. I just realized I didn't bring this up, and it was my bad. One actual little comment about what you just said, Shane, which is that you know, those side projects are really sometimes just as important as the main projects, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes we get so drawn into the things that we think that we have to spend all our time on, and there might be something else that you're sort of dabbling in. And I can attest from personal experience that it is the side things that sometimes end up becoming the main things.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really know, like we did that ambiguity, right?